Philadelphia, San Jose, or DC, Los Angeles Galaxy.
Pitch Pass.
Colorado Rapids, Vancouver Whitecaps, Seattle Sounders, Montreal Impact, Plus USA, New York Red Bulls.
Pitch Pass, your all-access credential to the people that matter in MLS. Here's your host, Greg Roach.
Welcome to Pitch Pass. Thank you so much for downloading the episode. Now, have you been to pitchpass.com? We are posting some blogs as well from the, and I will call him it now, great Sebastian Salazar. He put a new one up this week detailing his conversation with Mark Hughes, who is the coach of Stoke City and a big admirer of American soccer players. He explains why and the traits that he likes about American players and why he looks for them when he's recruiting. That's at pitchpass.com. You've got the podcast portion of the Pitch Pass juggernaut. And if you've gotten it through iTunes, thank you very much. You know what I'm about to ask you now. Rate us and leave a comment if you could. If you got us some other way, thank you very much for doing it. No matter how you found us, just tell more people about this show. We've got Grant Wahl coming on in just a few minutes. We'll recap a little Gold Cup stuff. We got the All-Star game coming up in MLS. We'll talk to him about that. And some new owners for Columbus Crew. We'll get his thoughts on that. But first, we head north of the border and talk to goalkeeper Troy Perkins of Montreal Impact. Troy, how are you, my friend? Good to speak with you again. You and I go way back to...
Yeah, many years.
Yes. So I want to start off with the last conversation that we had, which was when you first got back to the States from your sojourn in Europe. One of the big things that you said was one of the reasons why you came back was for your family, and specifically for your wife. So I'm curious to hear how she took the news that you are now out of the country again.
It hasn't gone well, I'll tell you that. The trade to Portland actually didn't go over. Well, it went over okay with her. She was okay, but she had gotten a really good job that she really wanted, and wasn't too happy about leaving. But she found a good job out there in Portland, and then she had some health issues actually come up about a year and a half ago. But it's different, It is what it is. We're in a different country, but yet we're still very close to my family, and we're working on looking at possibilities of what she can do here. It's obviously a lot easier for her to possibly find a job here than it would be, say, somewhere else in Europe.
Well, it's interesting because your story has been documented, and I thought especially when you were still having your second job, it made for a really nice storyline for a lot of writers. But speaking about her situation, that's something that you don't hear a lot about with MLS players, and a lot of the families, the spouses, they have to continue working because you guys aren't making the millions of dollars that basketball players are making. So I would imagine it would be kind of frustrating when you do get settled in a job and then all of a sudden your spouse comes home and go, hey, you know what, we're moving to the other side of the country. And then also, by the way, now we're moving out of the country again.
It's not easy for them, and they go through a lot. But on the flip side, my wife has a very good degree. She's a doctor of pharmaceuticals, and she works hard. She's a great woman. And so from that standpoint, it's one of those where, I'll play as long as I can. And then when I'm done playing, she can go do whatever she wants and I'll stay at home. So that's fine with me if that's the path that we have to go. But, she's been great throughout the whole thing.
Well, let me ask you, because I'm sure that when you were overseas, usually the clubs kind of get you language lessons. Do the Impact do that for their foreign players, which in this case would be you? Are they giving you guys French lessons if you would like them?
They haven't. They're not going to give them to us. It's not one of those things where you're stuck if you don't speak French. Say a guy comes from South America and only speaks Spanish. He's in the U.S. They have to provide English, or else the poor guy's not going to be able to get around.
Yeah.
Here, if you want to really pursue the path of learning French, they have contacts that you pay a little bit less than what you would normally, but they do make it available if that's something that you want to do.
It's a bilingual country, so I'm assuming that you're probably not taking them up on the deal. But is your wife trying to work while she's there? And if she does, because I know I've been to Montreal a few times, everybody does speak English, but I know there is a little bit of a stigma attached if you don't speak French, and I would imagine it's even more so when you're in the working world.
Yeah, especially in her career, her her what she does, it's very specific in French, both writing and speaking. So that's something that we're pursuing. We're actually expecting our second child in the next few months. So for now, everything's been put on hold. But it is definitely something we're going to look at. We've even looked at a tutor that may just come to our whole family. But my son is currently learning French at school, so for him, it's actually been a great thing.
Well, let's continue on the language track. I imagine for you when Nesta first got on the team, you as a keeper, you've got to marshal your back line, but it is Alessandro Nesta that's in front of you. How long did it take you to get over I'm being a little deferential to this guy, but I also need to get some things done as far as getting my back line together? Yeah,
I mean, there's a respect there. He's one of those guys that you don't have to, be on all the time. Even if he's making a mistake or he's not, he may be lazy of getting up, or you don't need to sit there and yell it out. I mean, because he gets it. He knows what he's doing. But at the same time, I don't care who's in front of me. I'm going to tell you the same thing. I'm going to be, the guy to push everyone and to get on people for not doing their job, or they need to do better at their job. So from that standpoint, it's a way of I've gained their respect, and the way that I've given them the respect that they deserve of not being someone who's always yelling at them.
When do you yell for the first time? Do you do it in practice just to break the ice, or do you save it to the game where he can't really do much back because everybody's watching?
No, you do it in training. You start off with you got to have an open conversation. You can't sit there and yell at someone and not allow them to yell at you. If you make a mistake, you have to be willing to accept it. And like I said, it's a respect that's both given and earned, and in that sense. And then when it comes game time, it's just one thing that maybe you just raise your voice a little bit, or you're specific about what you're saying to them, and they get it, and they're not going to take it personal, and they don't give personal insults back, either in the game or in training.
You guys had a great start to the season. And, I'm going to ask you a little bit about the new signings and how much you know and how much you've worked with them. But I assume that the thing that I'm going to ask you about is kind of part and parcel of why this is a question. And that is, the last month or so, the defense hasn't been as stout as it was at the beginning of the year. You've kind of been the one constant along the back line in defense. What has happened? Is it just been the fact that you've had to shuffle so many people in and out, or has something kind of gone wrong communication-wise in the back?
No, I think we lost touch with the whole reality of the situation. Is in this league, if you're not willing to battle and to fight and to go to war every game, you're not going to have the right to play and to play the possession style. You're not going to have the time to, and you're certainly not going to have that presence to dominate a team physically and mentally. And I think that's where we got away from what was successful for us in the beginning of the year. Is you look at possession percentages, and I don't like stats, but you look at them throughout the first couple games of the season, we had the very little minimum possession, but we were dominant in the fact that we were organized, we were hard to play against, and we were very tough physically. And if you look at the past month, we became very stretched out, very open, and really passive. We weren't tackling, we weren't putting bodies on the line, and we weren't attacking the ball per se, but and I think that's something we started to get back to and get our feet wet with again. But, I think we have to remember what that is that makes us successful.
One of the things that I was concerned about when I looked at the team was, okay, they're playing really well. This was the beginning of the season. You guys are playing really well, very stout defensively. You've got DeVayo there who will always take his chance. But the thing that I think was the concern was the age, the overall age of the team. I don't put you in that category, but it was a situation where I was like, okay, well, that team probably won't be able to stay healthy throughout the year. And if they do stay healthy, you guys are playing the Canadian Open Cup and moving on now to CONCACAF Champions League. Where are you guys at as far as your health, your fitness is concerned as you move into the last half of the season, the most important time of the season?
Yeah, we have a very good staff from a physical standpoint with the physios and our strength conditioning coach. So from that, it hasn't been a concern of ours all year. We've had guys that have gone out with injuries, but they haven't been long term. And when guys do step out, we have young players from the academy or who have been here for a few years who have stepped in and done an exceptional job. And I think that's kudos to the guys who started the youth program here and have brought those players up. They've developed them extremely well. And also the coaching staff. They understand that you don't need to train hard every day for some of these older guys, that they can train 2 or 3 days a week, and that's plenty for them. So they've managed each individual very well this year, and I think that's a huge success and a huge plus for us.
Well, and your other big difference from last year to this year is your coach. What has Schellebaum brought to the table? I don't want to say that Jesse Marsch didn't, but what was he able to enhance upon that Jesse Marsch started to kind of bring you guys even more together this season?
He's very, obviously you guys have seen, he's very passionate. He's emotional, he's passionate no matter of his training or on the game. He wants everyone to be their best, and he wants the best for everyone. And so from that, it's rewarding to play for him from that standpoint, that when you do well and you're performing, even if you don't win, that you're giving everything you got, he's there behind you. And even when it's bad, he's not throwing guys underneath the bus. He's not screaming and yelling at you for making mistakes. He wants you to perform, and he wants you to enjoy what you do. And it's just a philosophy of, he wants us to attack. He wants us to score goals. And when you win, it's fun. And when you lose, maybe it's not so fun, but yet he keeps things very entertaining at training, and it keeps everyone involved, and no one's above anyone from his standpoint.
It's reinforcement time for the entire league as the transfer window is open. Before I ask you about the guys that have already been brought in, I got to ask you about Joey Saputo, because Merritt Poulsen gets a lot of the press. Rob Hyndman gets a lot of the press as well as being a very interactive, a very engaged owner. Joey Saputo has been that way from the moment the franchise was awarded in MLS. What is he like day to day as an owner and as he relates to you as a player?
You would never know that he's the owner of the club or who he is really. We early on the season we saw him a lot. I think now he's been with his family a lot and doing different business things and vacations, whatever. But we see him almost every home game. He's on the field, shaking your hand as you walk off before the match, and then he's there losing and winning with you in the locker room. We in preseason he traveled with us down to Florida, was there with us for the first week. And he's one of the guys. He wants to be in the locker room with the group and feel the pain and feel the joy of winning. And he's behind us 100%. He's not an owner that goes crazy by 1 or 2 losses or 1 or 2 bad performances. He doesn't hit the alarm and say everyone jump ship. He's a guy that's seen it for many years. He's very intelligent about the game and knows the business extremely well. And they've got I think a great management here. Is
he similar to Poulsen? You've played under both of them.
His intensity and his passion for the game are there. I think personality-wise, they're completely 2 different people, completely. Poulsen is, he likes his social media a lot and shares an opinion about what he thinks of players quite easily. But, Joey, he's a little more reserved, I think, from that standpoint. But, they both do share a lot of passion, a lot of intensity for it.
I like how you say he's reserved as you play the games in a stadium with his name on it. I like that. It's nice. So let's talk about the guys that he's brought in. I assume that also is one of the positives about playing for Montreal Impact and playing for Joey Saputo is that whatever the team needs, he's going to bring it in, whether it's a high-profile player or a coaching change. He's going to do and spend the money that it takes, or even upgrading his stadium. He's going to do whatever it takes monetarily to make sure that the team is putting their best foot forward.
Well, I wouldn't say that he'll do whatever it takes. He's doing whatever it takes in a smart way. He's not just throwing his money around or throwing the club's money around just to buy whoever he wants. It's got to be the right fit for them, and they have an idea of the type of player they want here and the mentality and the experience that they want and what they want to do going forward. So they're very specific on what they do and how they do it. So it may look from afar that they're willing to do whatever it takes, but when you really look at it, it's a very specific methodology that they have.
I wanted to ask you about Hernan Bernadello, who is the new DP signing. Is he there with you guys yet? Is he training with you guys?
He's been with us for about a week now. I haven't seen too much of him, as with him being a midfielder. I don't play too much with him, but both of them, they come in the locker room, and you would never know they've played where they've played, and there's no egos. They're great guys, and I think everyone's really happy to have them here.
where is he fitness-wise in your uneducated opinion? I know you're not a physio, but where is he fitness-wise? If I'm an Impact fan, when would I kind of plan on seeing him play with you guys?
That honestly would be up to him and the staff. But, I mean, for me, as a professional, you're always fit, whether you're in season or out of season. Your fitness is never really an issue. So I think, we maybe see him this weekend, maybe Wednesday, who knows.
And Adrian Lopez, who I assume you are working more closely with, was the other signing. Where do you see him fitting in along your back line?
I don't know.
Wait, was he one of those guys? Because we talked last week with Chris Rolfe, and he was kind of scratching his head that they brought in a DP signing to play his position. Are you kind of in the same position where you're like, do we need a defender?
Well, no, we do. We need a younger defender, and that's what he brings. If you look at Nesta, he's come out a couple times and said this is last year, and you look at next season. Well, what do we have for next season? We don't have anyone right now. So we need that experience that he brings, and he's bringing a lot of quality to the table, and so he may be one of those guys that steps in, and you're like, well, how do we not play him? So we have to put him in. So we'll see. Time will tell.
What is your favorite DeVio offside joke?
We just give him stick all the time about how many times he's offside, and it's almost, I think we have a running pool of seeing if he can match his goals for the year and how many offsides he can get in one game.
Well, I was going to say there's no chance he can match his goals with his offsides.
No, you never know. I mean, in one game he might.
That's true. and the thing that you always have to say though is you could be offside 50 times. You bang in two goals in a game, that's fine. Be offside as much as you want.
Exactly.
You are, I don't want to say you're coming home, but you guys, your match this weekend is against DC United. Do you get up for these games more than say, a random game versus Chivas USA?
No. With this league, and I was actually talking with our head coach about this, as there's no easy games in this league, and there's no team that you say, okay, we just go in, if we play well and we keep possession, we'll win. DC is a tough place to go and play, because of the heat, because of the facility, and because they want to prove a point that they're a better team than what their record shows. And Ben's going to have them fired up no matter what. And bringing Montreal in with the guys that we have, and they're going to be up for it. So it's not an easy game, and we're certainly going to be up for it as well, because we have to get ourselves back to the top of the table, and we certainly want to show that Saturday was not just a fluke.
Well, you guys have 2 games in hand and are only a point out of first place in the Eastern Conference, so there is plenty of time to make your move or continue your move. But it's got to be a little bit different, though, for you guys this year as you travel, and maybe even at home. You guys aren't in the underdog role anymore. You guys are one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. Do you feel a different attitude when you guys come into a visiting venue, or is the crowd at Saputo different now that you guys aren't the underdog anymore?
I think let's look at the home crowd. I think there's more of a buzz about us in the city. People are certainly taking notice of us a lot more than they did last year. But when we go on the road, no one really cares. It's the only guys they care about are the Italians, because obviously everyone knows who Marco DeVio is, and Alessandro Nesta. They want to take pictures and get the autographs. But outside of that, it's not a big deal. But it certainly is growing here in the city, and the better results we get, people really notice us.
And I talked to Amanda Stein, who covers you guys for the ESPN or the TSN affiliate in Montreal, and her big thing was the fact that you guys were still making a mark while the Canadians were on a playoff run, knowing that the Canadians were always going to be number one in the city. Is as an American, is that something that you are cognizant of this time of year, making sure that you continue to stay in the public eye as far as the city is concerned?
Yeah, certainly. And, it's always going to be tough in the city with hockey going on. And even with the CFL, the Alouettes here, do have a good following. And so for us, we got to keep pushing and getting good results and making a statement. And people are going to really stand up in the city. They really like a winning team in the city. They like their sports. And when the team's doing well, a lot of people come out.
Well, Troy, we miss you here in D.C., so it's going to be good to have you back for this weekend at RFK. And best of luck to you guys in your playoff push, my friend.
Well, I appreciate it very much. It's great talking with you.
He's a good guy. You don't hear much about Troy Perkins because of the predominance of good goalkeeping in MLS, but also he's very, very, very soft-spoken, very quiet guy. So one of the more underrated keepers, I think, in the league, and I think you're seeing it outside of what he referred to and what I refer to, a little bit of a bump in early July. But if you look at their results, 1-0 win over Sporting this past week, 0-0 draw against FC Dallas, they're tightening that defense up, and I think Troy Perkins is definitely one of the more underrated players in MLS. Let's talk a little bit about big picture stuff. Let's talk about Gold Cup. Let's talk about MLS All-Stars. Let's talk about everything league and U.S. soccer related with Sports Illustrated and Fox Soccer's Grant Wahl. Well, Grant, welcome to the show. Are you in Kansas City right now?
I am not in Kansas City, actually. I'm a little bummed about it because I'm from there. But as much as I want to be there, I've been on the road for 3 weeks covering Gold Cup. I'm back home in New York. My wife is happy as a result, would not have been had I gone there. And Brian Strauss, the excellent new addition to SI.com, is doing it for us over there, and will do a great job.
Well, you know what? Before we get into all of the soccer stuff, how is that working out? Brian Strauss, one of the most respected guys in soccer, U.S. soccer writing. Now with you at Sports Illustrated, it takes a little bit of the load off of you, but also I got to think, just like in a soccer situation, some competition for places going on now.
Well, all I can say is I'm tremendously excited to have Brian Strauss on board. I think Brian has shown over many years now that he's one of the best out there when it comes to writing about the sport here, analyzing it, knowing the people, breaking stories, just being an all-around dynamite writer and reporter. And to have him on our team is just a huge addition. So to me, it just shows how, SI continues to put resources into covering this sport the right way and making sure that our coverage matches up with the growth that's taking place on the field in the game. So, it's awesome. In 2010, that was when I was able to go full-time soccer after covering basketball for a number of years with soccer on the side. And, this is just a great development. I love Brian. He's one of my favorite people in the business, and I'm excited he's with us.
Yeah, and I think what you just said as the last point to me is the huge point, which is, as you said, you only been covering soccer full-time for SI for 3 years, and in that time, look what's happened, and now there is now a second person covering soccer for Sports Illustrated. And, we can talk about this all day and stroke each other all day, but the mainstream media is starting to devote the resources to the sport. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and so much has happened. I think the television networks and the huge investment in soccer rights from places like Fox and ESPN and BN and NBC, you can see so many games now every week live from around the world here in the U.S., and I think that's increased interest. I think, interest in the U.S. national team has increased in MLS. And, I think writing about it is certainly, there's a lot more good journalism out there right now than there was a few years ago about soccer in America. And
now let's talk about the event that you just covered, which is Gold Cup. And I think we talk about raising interest. I'll tell you what raised some interest was Grant Wahl's hats. So give me the backstory on the hat. Where is the hat now? And what's the hat's future in this sport?
It's a very good question. It was purely functional when I first got it out in Salt Lake for Game 2 of the Gold Cup. It was a midday game, and it was very hot and sunny out there. And if you haven't noticed, I'm bald. So it was purely self-preservation. I had about 15 minutes in a Nordstrom's. The sideline reporting thing was new to me, and so I hadn't prepared for it. So I had to get a bunch of dry fit T-shirts, undershirts that day, and then needed a hat. And Nordstrom's had this. This is about all they had, so I picked that one. And it kind of went from there. And then Grant Wahl's hat Twitter came online, and so it kind of took on a life of its own. But still remains functional. I almost lost it at the Hartford Hotel. I left it there, but a partner of mine was still there and shipped it to me in Baltimore during the tournament. So I just got done wearing it out for a story out of New York Red Bulls training site where Steve Nash was today with Inter Milan. He was training with them. So the hat will continue to be seen.
I like that the hat took a private escort down from Hartford to Baltimore. That's a great addition to Grant Wahl's hats legend. I love that. And as a fellow shaved head man, I feel your pain. You need that hat, and we're always putting that box of baseball caps. So I'm really glad you just didn't go with the Fox baseball cap. You went outside the box.
Yeah, I have baseball caps, but honestly, if I really shaved my head recently, I don't think it's a great look with the baseball caps. It kind of matches my, wearing a jacket and then some good, jeans on the sidelines, a tie, trying to at least look semi-professional. And the hat makes me look like, I made a comparison to Dent McSkimming, the only American reporter who covered the 1950 World Cup in Brazil. That was kind of in honor of him, a little old school.
I like that. You proudly carry on his legacy. So let's talk about the team. Putting Landon Donovan aside, I mean, obviously, he set all questions about whether he will be in Brazil next year, if healthy, to rest. What can you see from any of the other guys that made a strong enough case to make it into the last half of qualifying and then made a case to go to Brazil next summer?
Well, there are a few other U.S. players besides Donovan who improved their stock to me in this tournament. The saddest one, obviously, is Stuart Holden, who had a good tournament, played 90 minutes several times, started the final, and then goes out with yet another serious knee injury, a torn ACL in his right knee. And right now, he's being relentlessly positive, and I think that's so impressive given his injury history. But it's going to be tough for him to get back in time, I think, to be firing all cylinders for the World Cup. I guess it's still possible, so, you can, I guess if you're a fan, hope for the best. Other guys as well, I look at Nick Diskerud, Joe Corona, even Kyle Beckerman, to an extent Clarence Goodson. I thought those guys increased their stock. Eddie Johnson's been getting time with the A squad or at least coming in as Corona has been, but played well in this Gold Cup, and I think may get a few more opportunities with the World Cup qualifying squad to play. But, it's a crowded group of guys who are playing well right now, and that's one example of how well this U.S. team has been playing through World Cup qualifying in June, going perfect in the qualifiers, and then winning the Gold Cup. And when you've won 11 straight games as a national team, you're going to end up having some hard choices if you're Jurgen Klinsmann, but those are the kind of hard choices you prefer to have.
Do you like mixed Diskerud over Sasha Kljestan at this point?
Well, Diskerud's a younger player, and so that automatically, I think, gives him a bit of an advantage. I don't think Kljestan's work at Anderlecht should be ignored, though. I mean, he's had a big role over there. They've won championships, and I think he came into the qualifiers, and at least, with something of a presence, though I would say I think he had a big chance against Belgium in that friendly in Cleveland, and, Michael Bradley wasn't there, and we realized in that game, I think, about, how good Michael Bradley is and how necessary he is for the team, and so I think that was kind of, rightly or wrongly, I think that was a tough moment for Kljestan as far as wanting to prove he deserves to play with, the starting 11 with the A squad.
It looked as if we could put the Breck Shea conversation to bed from the first part of Gold Cup, and then obviously he scores the game winner in the Cup final, which now, I guess, gives a lot of writers much more material for the next 9 months or so. Breck Shea, does he warrant consideration? Does he need to play in World Cup qualifiers to really solidify a play? Where do we stand here with Breck Shea as far as World Cup roster is concerned?
I have no idea what to make of Breck Shea right now as far as the U.S. national team, because you're right. You point out that he scored the game-winning goal in the Gold Cup final. He scored the game-winning goal in the group stage game against Costa Rica. So that was the two hardest opponents for the U.S. in the Gold Cup. And yet, he was really brutally bad in the one game he started against Cuba out in Utah. Give credit to Jurgen Klinsmann for not just burying him on the bench completely after that game. But it's a strange path that Shea has taken in the last year and a half. And when Klinsmann was first, becoming the U.S. coach, Shea was almost an automatic starter for about his first 10 games with the national team. And that's certainly not the case now. And yet, for all the trouble that Shea's had with the national team and at club level, where he has not come close to finding the form he had 2 years ago in MLS when he was a top 3 MVP choice, he's got to get his club situation going at Stoke this year if he's going to be able to have any chance of making the World Cup team. But Klinsmann seems to want to give Shea a chance. So he will get the opportunity, and he does seem at times when he comes on to bring a dimension of wit and speed and something of a threat as a sub lately, which is different from, as a starter role. I thought Klinsmann had a great quote the other day after the game. He goes, Breck is unpredictable for himself and for the opponent, which I don't know if he intended to put it that way, but it was sort of hilarious. He was unpredictable for himself. I've compared him to Nuke LaLoosh from the movie Bull Durham. And Breck makes me laugh in some of what he says publicly and stuff, and I like him. But I'm curious to see if he can have a good year at club level because he needs one.
We've got Bosnia coming up in August. I'm sure we'll see Breck Shea there as part of a Euro-based squad. I assume you didn't ask him, and I'm talking about Klinsmann, about Aaron Johansson because he hadn't come out at the point where Gold Cup ended. Would you put kind of a wager on him getting a look in that Bosnia match?
Potentially. The timing of his announcement certainly seemed timed. I don't know exactly how much communication Johansson's had behind the scenes with Klinsmann. I know they've had some. I know Klinsmann is interested in him, and I wonder if this was, one, the player trying to communicate publicly through Klinsmann of, I'd love to be called into this friendly that's coming up, or maybe they've already talked about it behind the scenes, and this was just a bit of an advance on that. Not totally certain on that front. We'll see if he's on the roster that gets called up, and especially, too, for those World Cup qualifiers, when you can cap-tie somebody and there won't be any more conversation about whether he is going to play for Iceland or the U.S. I do think that some places I've seen, already, media folks, fans are saying, Johansson's instantly going to be on the World Cup team, and I certainly wouldn't go that far, that fast, because how many of those people have actually seen the guy play, for one thing? And, even if you have seen him play a little bit, you don't really know exactly how he's going to do in a U.S. uniform. And he's certainly promising. 22-year-old goal scorer, going to be an important player for AZ Alkmaar, replacing Jose Altidore essentially this year. And yet there's a lot more, I think, that needs to be seen before you can say this guy's going to be going to the World Cup.
And is a friendly where really you're just getting the guys back together to get ready for September and the important last phase of the hexagonal? Is that the time to really be going, you know what, let's see what this guy looks like? And that's kind of why I also think you probably won't see a John Anthony Brooks be called in and see what his situation's like, because it's really not the time for this anymore, is it?
Well, I think it is possible that this could happen in August. The August friendly is sort of something I think shouldn't even exist anyway. I know a lot of European club coaches don't like the August friendly date because, it's right at the start of the European club season, and the national teams have taken priority for the last couple of months anyway, and it's really a distraction in the preparations for the start of the club season. Not all that useful in my mind, but it is, these games are scheduled or allowed to be scheduled, so U.S. Soccer does it, and this is the most kind of convenient way to get most of the top players together in Europe on short notice, but you're still only getting them for about 2 days. And so it is a way, though, for, kind of initial introductions to be made to potentially a new player like Johansson or Brooks, so that they can just get a quick feel of the U.S. staff and the players in the game where there's not a lot of high stakes, because there's going to be a lot higher stakes, obviously, in September.
Let's shift gears into MLS. I don't want to catch you too off guard, but since you aren't in Kansas City, I would assume that you have done a little bit of research on the breaking news on the day that we're recording, and that is the new ownership group for Columbus Crew. Do you have initial thoughts on that change from Hunt to a new owner in MLS?
I mean, my initial thoughts are very positive. I think it's important to get new voices into the league, new money into the league, and the Hunts have been great for MLS from the start as far as their kind of continued support. but I do feel they're very much on the conservative side of what the Board of Governors decides as far as where to keep the salary cap, how much spending the league should be doing. And any new ownership group that comes in is going to be less conservative than the Hunts, who are at the extreme side of the ledger among MLS owners. So, this new group coming in, San Francisco based, they say they're not going to move the team to San Francisco, so that's a good thing if you're a Columbus fan. Obviously, there's already a team in the Bay Area in MLS. I think this is something to feel good about, that I think these guys bought into the league, maybe not even so much because of Columbus and the great things that are happening there, because there really aren't that many great things happening with that team right now, but because the league as a whole is doing so well, and you can get a piece of the pie by becoming part of this single entity ownership group. So, that's a good sign. I mean, Columbus has been on the market for quite a while, and there weren't any buyers for a long time, and now finally we have one. And I think that's a reflection of all the things you see going on around the league with new investment coming in, especially the $100 million expansion fee for New York City FC. That's a really good sign when you see things like that happening.
And I think you brought up a great point about new ownership wanting to be a little more dynamic. You can't fault the Hunts for being conservative. I mean, when you owned multiple teams and you were basically losing money and funding the league for so many years, that would kind of lead you to be more conservative than somebody who's just bought in the quote MLS 2.0. But for MLS 2.0 to really take hold, the whole multiple team thing had to go.
Yeah, it did. Apologies for my dog, by the way. She apologizes.
That's fine.
I think, you look back in the Anschutz Entertainment Group, owned as many as 6 teams at one point, and that saved the league, and that was huge. But even Anschutz knew that eventually they wanted to, own one team in the league, that being the Los Angeles Galaxy, and now all they have, in addition to that, is a 50% stake in the Houston Dynamo. So, the Hunts at one point had 3 teams. They're down to 1 now in Dallas. And you look at who they sold to last time in Kansas City, and that group that's taken over in Kansas City has been one of the all-time success stories in the history of the league. What they've done there and what we're seeing this week at the All-Star game that's my hometown. And, they've gone from being a soccer dead zone just 5 or 6 years ago to being just an amazing place for soccer.
I don't want to say can soccer work in Columbus, but you look at a Portland, you look at the new Sporting Kansas City. These aren't huge markets. These aren't the major markets. So you do think to yourself, okay, well, if an ownership group comes in, has the right mentality, brings the right people in, makes the right choices as far as player personnel concerned, it really doesn't matter that it's Columbus. No disrespect to people of Columbus, but it's not New York, it's not LA, but that doesn't mean that can't be a dynamic franchise in MLS.
Yeah, I think, part of it, if you look at the Kansas City blueprint, I think that's something that every team like Columbus in their situation should follow, and part of that is having the right stadium situation, but that's not all of it. There's a lot more to it as far as, what you make the stadium experience be like, what you establish as far as the culture inside the team, how you market the team. I do think you look at the way Kansas City rebranded, and not everyone was a fan of Sporting Kansas City as a name at first, but they've done a really good job of branding the team. And I do think Columbus Crew could actually use something of a rebrand. And maybe that's just a new logo. I don't know. Maybe it's an entirely new team name. But, the mid-'90s team names that they came up with for these MLS teams were, in a lot of cases, just brutal.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't think Crew was by any means the worst. It's not the best. And we'll see where it goes from here. But that whole market, I think, just needs, some more, authentic soccer happening there. And I think there needs to be more, there need to be more demands from ownership. I honestly can't figure out why Robert Verzita still has a job, to be honest. And so we'll see what happens moving forward there if the new ownership makes a move in that area as well.
So as we're recording, we're in the middle of the All-Star festivities in Kansas City. I saw an interesting tweet from Grant Ruthven, who follows MLS from Scotland. And, his comment was one that made me think, and I'm by no means a Euro snob, but his comment was, not saying it's good, not saying it's bad, but this type of kind of activity, it's not a weekend, but this type of weekend type festivity wouldn't happen in any other league in the world. And he said, that's not good or bad. It's just pointing out a statement. And I thought about it. I was like, you know what? That is true. You don't get this kind of thing, this spectacle in any other league. What are your thoughts on that as a uniquely American type situation?
You mean like having an all-star game and an all-star week for MLS?
Exactly. So you got the game, you've got all of the pomp and circumstance around the game. You had Macklemore performing. You've got that whole thing. That teams don't take a break, or leagues don't take a break other than just have a winter break where they just go away, where they kind of stop and just celebrate themselves. That's an American thing.
It is an American thing, and I think MLS probably does it in the most creative way they could by getting a foreign club team to come in and play against the MLS All-Stars. I'm not a huge fan of All-Star games, to be honest, but I don't want to sound like some crabby complainer. So I don't know how much farther down the road I want to go with it. I haven't been to an All-Star game since 2010, and that's for a number of reasons. Some planned, some not, but part of it, I think the running thread is it's not that high a priority for me to cover. And that's the reason why I haven't been there the last few years.
I think it's one of those situations, and the NBA All-Star Game is a good example of what I'm about to say. And it more so seems like a celebration of the sport in a city. So you have random people from Kansas City who may know that there's a soccer team in Kansas City, but then notice, hey, why are these streets closed? Oh, there's an All-Star game. Oh, an MLS All-Star game. Oh, okay. I think that's kind of what a good part of the MLS weekend type festivities is to raise awareness in these cities that, hey, this is a major sport, and we've got some major things going on.
No, I think that's true. And now that the MLS Cup final is not played at a prearranged site, it's at one of the finalists, I think it's important maybe to have, the prearranged neutral site big event where you can show where the league is going.
Yeah.
For an all-star game type thing.
And the game is secondary at that point.
Yeah, it is. But it's at least not so much of a charade that, the game is actually compelling as well. I remember some of those East-West MLS All-Star games where Tony Meola would end up playing forward and Landon Donovan would show off his sports bra in his goal celebration after Brandy Chastain had done that. It just became kind of a silly event, I thought. And it's not like that so much anymore. And, it is what it is. But it's nice when Manchester United's come. I'm not out there with Roma this week. I would guess it's kind of cool to have Totti and Michael Bradley and those guys in Kansas City, and having them be a part of that.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you about the league and parity and your definition of what parity is. Somebody pointed out on Twitter while watching this weekend's matches that you really can't assume or guess any team in the league's form from week to week. Yeah. And somebody will respond with, well, that's parity. And to me, my version of parity is a team is really, really good throughout the season, wins the cup, and because of financial constraints or whatever, has to reload. And then maybe the next year, another team raises its hand as, okay, now we have peaked for this season. I don't know if I like this kind of parity as opposed to the parity I just described. Where do you stand?
I guess where I feel is, I see the leagues in Europe, and I see how only one or two teams at the beginning of the season really have a chance to win the title. And that, to me, is a problem. And I think that's an area where the NFL has things figured out, is that just about every team, or a lot of teams, can feel like they have a chance to win the championship at the beginning of the year in MLS, I think. I know the LA Galaxy won the title the last 2 years, but at the same time, I like that sense that you don't know for certain which one or two teams are going to win. My thing with MLS that I'd like to see change, I guess, is the playoff structure, and my proposal to do so in a realistic way that the ownership, groups might actually entertain would be, okay, you can keep having your 10 teams make the playoffs. I understand why you do that, because you want to make the games matter for as many clubs in the regular season until the end of the season. But I do think we should make it so that it's a much higher hill to climb in the playoffs for a lower seeded team. So if you're like 7, 8, 9, 10, one of those teams, I don't think you have a high enough hill to climb right now. And so I just think it would be a much better way to go to have, if you're the number one seed in the playoffs, you get to host every playoff game in a kind of grouped stage with 3 other teams. I actually designed this. It's all out on the SI.com website from about a year and a half ago. Make it almost like a Confederations Cup when you get down to 8 teams, 2 groups of 4. And then if you're the 4th seed in one of those groups, you're going to play 3 group games all on the road. If you're the top seed, you play all of them at home, and the other 2 teams in between, I just think that would make it, I'd feel much better if like a 9 seed won the title, if it had to do that much more to get there. And right now they're not required to.
Yeah, I mean, that goes, and that takes the whole home and home thing off of the table, because then it's, okay, you scraped your way in. Now the hill that you've climbed, now you have to go get the second peak, which is all road games from here on out.
Yeah, I just think that would be better, and that way you can still have the same amount of teams in the postseason, but it feels like, it feels right. It feels better. Last year, I forget, it was like an 8 and 9 seed got to the final. And that's, to me, it sort of makes a mockery of the regular season. Why should we pay so much attention to this 34-game schedule if it's basically a crapshoot in the postseason?
All right, before I let you go, tell us where we can find that playoff layout that you've envisioned.
Probably the easiest way would be to do a Google search for Grant Wahl MLS playoff structure.
That's the easiest way, huh, Grant?
Probably the easiest way. Maybe I'll put on my Twitter profile, especially once we get toward the postseason. I'll put a link up.
Well, and you know what? We'll also link it at pitchpass.com as part of this podcast, so to make it easy for you as well.
Nice.
Grant Wall's hat. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. We'll have you on before the end of the year, my friend.
Enjoyed it. Take care.
Pitch Pass.
This is your voice. This is my red, white, and blue. This is my anthem to you.
For more show information, go to pitchpass.com.